So I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit of cabin fever lately. February is just around the corner. We're not completely ready to get into full spring mode, but we are throwing something a little springy into the mix with this new bundle. And it's kind of, well, I mean, it's multi-purpose as most of our stuff is. And we'll go through the other stuff in the bundle in the other videos. But today we're gonna put together a really pretty crocus planner. And we've not done a crocus before. So I've spent probably the last 4 or 5 hours just trying to make sure that my technique is down so that I can teach it to you. And let's just jump right in here. There's a couple things we're gonna do to kind of begin putting our flowers together. I'm gonna put that off to the side so that everything dries nicely, and we'll build the planner and then finish up the flowers. So one thing I do wanna go over real quick is inking. And for that, I'm gonna grab a few sheets of white paper because I always kind of like to see or use something to kind of contrast things with when I'm inking. So anyway, there are a total of 5 flowers in this bundle. Now, let me show you real quick. I've already put 3 of them together because I'm gonna do 2 with you, but you can see how beautiful they turn out once all said and done. And I highly recommend that you spend some time inking these. You don't have to, but on my first one, I didn't ink it. Well, I inked it a little bit, but not as much as I did after I put it together. And I was like, well, you know, I was looking at the photos of the crocuses online, and I was like, well, why not? If we're gonna do it, let's go all out. So I'm just gonna go through some things here real quick. Again, you're gonna have 5 flowers. 2 of them are going to be purple. Well, in my case, they're purple. You can make them whatever color you want, but the way that they're laid out, you're going to have 2 of one color, in my case, purple. There's 6 petals to a flower. Okay, so we've got our 6 petals. Each flower is going to have 5 leaves, like this, and you can mix and match whatever colors you want, whatever sizes you want. It doesn't really matter. In the end, they're all going to kind of, you know, just kind of blend in. You've got your little stamen piece that looks like this. And then each stamen piece has these additional pieces. There's 3 for each one. I've already folded them at the crease. And these are gonna go on this piece as well. Okay, so what you're looking at here, and you've got these little sheath pieces. Okay, now some of them, you're gonna have 2, 4, 6, you're gonna have 8 of these. And there's 5 flowers here. You're saying to yourself, well, that's uneven. It doesn't make sense. Well, some of them you can put 2 on. Others you can put 1 on. You can decide which one you want to do that. Or you could just put 1 on all of them. It's up to you. We're just trying to kind of create some variation here. Okay, so this is what you need per flower. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go over what I did as far as the inking. And we do have a nice blog post that goes over even more inking techniques. Now, I'm kind of going to be inking over my existing ink, and also one other thing too, while I'm here, there is an official app for Dreaming Tree. When you open up the app, let me turn the brightness down so you can actually see it. When you bring up the app, if you scroll down to where it says supplies, you'll see the supplies here, and we talk about inking and the applicators as well as the inks that we use. So it's all right there. It'll literally take you to Amazon to get it. Okay, so download the app, go to the Apple App Store or Google Play, grab the app. So typically, this one's brand new. Okay, so as you can see, I barely dabbed it. I got a ton of ink on there. I don't want all that ink on there. If you're going to ink this, I would suggest inking both sides. It really adds to the overall feel for the final flower. As you can see here in this purple one, you see how I did the shading on the inside as well as on the outside. I almost maybe even went a little bit heavier on the inside. I kind of studied the photos of various crocuses, or croci, I don't know what the proper term is, on Google Images, and last night I just kind of decided, you know what, I want this to be bolder. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm starting at the bottoms. Actually, you can start anywhere. The very edges at the bottoms, I would just kind of hit just slightly the top, and then obviously the very edge. Same with the other side, just kind of get the edge a little bit, okay? And then you can see here from the tip to about a third of the way down, I added a little bit more ink, okay? And I'm very softly just grazing the surface. Of course, the pressure is going to depend on how new or old your ink pad is, okay? So I achieved that look. And now you can always cut out some extra petals just to practice on, to make sure that, you know, you're getting it to look the way you want it to look. And, you know, if you mess it up, just cut out some more. These are really small, they cut out real quick, and there's no sense in putting together a final product if you're not happy with something. But I will say that as soon as you figure one out, the rest of them will go together very easily as far as the inking and the assembly for that matter. So that's kind of the look I'm going for. Just because like I said, I looked on Google Images, I saw some that really spoke to me, and I just spent a little extra time inking this, because I know that even from some of the projects that you guys have posted in the Dreaming Tree group, there have been projects where I didn't go as deep with the ink on some of my flowers, and I saw that you guys did, and I love that. It turned out really nice. So, you know, depending on the flower, depending on the project, you may or may not want to go deeper with the inks. I personally think for this one, it really calls for it, especially in these purples. This is really gorgeous. Okay, so again, just cut this out. I just kind of here and there, when I notice that I'm not really getting any ink applying to my paper, I'll just dab it a little bit. And again, if your ink pad is older, you may need to push down harder. This thing is pretty much brand new, so I barely have to graze the surface of this, and I'm getting a lot of coverage, okay? So anyway, the petals are gonna be inked, and then as far as the flower goes, nothing else. I didn't ink anything else on the flower. Didn't ink the stamens, the sheaths, the leaves. I just left those as is. There's enough going on with this that I think that is enough. You can certainly, if you'd like, you can ink the leaves, add a little bit of turquoise to them, or a darker green, you know, whatever you think looks good. But I would recommend spending some time with this. Earlier today and last night, as I was doing this, I put on YouTube. It was like just a talk show or something, or like one of those interview shows, a podcast. Just had that on and just zoned out, got into my flow, was absorbing some knowledge while I was just kind of, you know, getting into this zone and doing the inking. It's probably one of my, I told Ron today when I was showing him the flowers, which, by the way, great job to Ron for another amazing floral design, and to Diana for bringing it to life. But yeah, I was showing him, and you know, I like I said, I zoned out for a couple hours just doing the inking, because I really want this to pop. So up to you how much time you want to commit. Just remember, I think the more time you do commit, the better you're going to feel at the end, because it's a very meditative thing. And it's almost like after a certain point, it just becomes almost automatic. And like I said, you kind of zone out. Okay, so you get the idea here as far as the inking. Again, totally optional, up to you. I would definitely recommend doing so, and kind of form a little assembly line. Maybe, you know, start with your inking, get all your inking done, and then we're going to put together the stamen piece, and we're going to assemble the whole stamen and let that dry, because there are these little individual pieces here. They're actually going to get glued onto this, and we want that to really fully set before we start shaping and building our flower. Okay, and that can take, you know, well, it doesn't take that long, but we want to be sure that it doesn't come breaking apart, so we're going to give it a little extra time. All right, so that being said, you're going to need some hibachi skewers. These are the little, okay, so you're going to need some hibachi skewers, these little shish kebab skewers, and some floral tape. I've cut these to about 6 inches, Okay, so you can see here at the 12 mark, they end up at about the 6-inch mark, so they're about 6 inches long. And I'm gonna first off cover this entire stick with some floral tape. Make sure that you stretch it out to reveal and release that stickiness that's built into the tape. And just run that all the way down to the bottom. And that's gonna help with gluing and assembly and all that stuff. Okay, so there's one. And again, I've got 3 of the flowers already pre-made. I'm gonna do 2 of them with you today. I think 2 is probably enough to ensure that I cover everything and without being overly redundant. Okay, so just kind of run that down the stick all the way down to the bottom. It's gonna have a little bit of a tackiness to it. That's gonna make everything else go a lot smoother, okay? All right, so we're gonna start off with the little stamens here. Now, what we're gonna need to do is wrap this around a pretty thin hibachi stick. So what I did was I started off with a large dowel, or you can use a marker, anything that's kind of larger, and I started to just kind of wrap it around the dowel just to kind of break up those fibers in the paper and start getting it to be a little bit round. Now obviously that's not going to be its final shape. That is just the starting point, okay? Now you can see that it's curved. Now I'll grab a dowel that's a little bit thinner, a smaller diameter, and I'll wrap it around that just to kind of, you know, get it going into a circle. Now that's as far as that's going to go. I'll grab another one that's even smaller, and I'm just going to kind of wrap that around the dowel. Let me move this up a little bit so you can see it better. Just wrapping it around the dowel. And kind of like you're rolling a cigarette, or for my flower children, those other things you used to roll. There we go. Okay, so now it's even more round, and now it's kind of going to be more ready and more easily put onto this hibachi skewer. Okay, so what I'd suggest doing now, I can unravel it a little bit, and you're going to start. You'll notice here that the stamens go from smaller to larger. We're going to put our hibachi stick on this side here, on the very edge of where the smaller stamens are. Okay, but before we do so, let's get a little bit of glue going right along the perimeter. Okay, and actually throw a little bit of glue on the other side as well. Just very thin. You don't need a lot. It doesn't need to be gloppy because then it'll never dry. And pop your hibachi stick right in there. And I would just put it on my surface and just kind of roll it nice and tight around that hibachi stick. Get it as tight as you can. If it's a little loose, it's not the end of the world. And roll it all the way until it's completely wrapped up in itself, and the other end is on top of itself, and then you're going to need to hold that in place for a few moments. Okay, you're going to let that really set because it is fighting itself. There's a lot of strong fibers in that paper that want to unravel. So you could technically put that seam where the seam where the seam is, up or against your desk, your table, and just hold it and let the table kind of do the work, keeping it in place. And just be patient with this because it really needs to set so it doesn't unravel. Okay, so again, this is kind of why I would suggest kind of doing this as like an assembly line. I think familiarity is going to kind of make things run smoother for you. Once you kind of get into the muscle memory of doing one thing, the next time you do it, and the sooner you do it, the easier it's going to be. Okay, so you can see how nicely that's rolled around my hibachi stick. There's still a little area down here where it's not completely ready to go yet. Okay, now once that's in place, I would grab some floral tape and just tape the bottom of it, maybe just like a half a layer of floral tape against the bottom just to hold it in place, and go down maybe half an inch or so and get that to stay like that. Perfect. Okay, so again, I'm going to do this like an assembly line, just like I mentioned you probably should. So we'll go over to the next little stamen piece. I'm using a nice thick dowel here, and I'm going to wrap it around this dowel, just kind of break up those fibers in there, loosen them up. Okay, kind of get it curved a little bit. Grab something a little bit smaller as far as diameter, wrap that around, break up those fibers even more. Grab an even smaller dowel. I guess you could technically start with the smaller dowel, but typically when I do that, it ends up really creasing the paper. So I'm trying to be a little subtle with this so that it doesn't crease the paper and make it look boxy. I want it to be as round as possible. Okay. And then we'll open it up a little bit and we'll get our glue on both sides. One side will help it stick to the stick. The other side will help it stick to itself. Okay, just a nice thin line of glue. Don't overdo it because it'll take forever to dry. And then a little bit on the other side. And just go up to right before where the stamens actually start. Okay, did I get my other stick set up? Where are you? Oh, geez, I didn't. Oh yeah, I did. Whew. Okay, now remember, put your hibachi stick on the side that has the smaller stamens. Okay, then I would use your table to kind of help you roll it into place. Just roll it nice and tight around that stick. Okay, and once you got it all the way around, just press and hold it at that seam. If it's not perfect, it's okay. As long as the stamens are up there and as long as you have that nice orange stem, you're fine. Okay, so just hold that in place, let that set, and that looks like it turned out nicely. Now the petals are going to be covering up most of this, and eventually we'll kind of flare these out a little bit just to kind of thicken them up and make them a little more dense. And this hibachi stick's kind of crooked. It's okay though. All right. I'm going to be patient here, make sure that this completely sets before we move on. And then what I did, if we can just cut over here, you'll see I've got a piece of just some dry foam here that I'm kind of using as a, well, just a little stand to keep all my stuff in place while I work on it. Okay, and I'll show you here in a second what I did to more easily get the other sections of the stamen pieces on here. Okay, I think this is ready for some floral tape at the bottom, and that's going to help it from, keep it from like moving up and down, and also kind of make it all look seamless as well. Okay, so our little stamen pieces are done. Again, you are going to do this 3 more times. You need 5 of these. I'm only doing 2 with you. Okay, so what I did was I put these in my little, you can do it like this, I think, so you can see it better. I put it in my dry foam, and again, you've got these 3 pieces. Each of your flowers is going to require 3 of these little guys, and they come out flat. There's a little score mark in the center. You just need to fold it in half. Okay, and then what I did was I put glue on the very, very peak, I guess you call it, if this was like a mountain, since it's folded in half. A very, very thin amount of glue right on that very edge. Okay, and then I take that. I actually started at where the seam is to cover up the seam. The very tip of this, you want to bring this up to right around where the stamens start, or the little frilly parts of the stamen. I think there's a technical term for it, but it's not a botany class, so we're not going to get into that. Okay, but you want to just kind of glue it on like that. Okay, so it's just kind of sitting like that. And that's another reason why I have it in here, so that it doesn't end up getting squished on my table. And the idea is to space these out so they look nice and even. There's 3 of them, so do your best to space them out so they're evenly distributed around the stem. Okay, so I'm putting glue right on that very tip. Okay, so again, let me just show you here. If you open this up and then fold it, I'm putting the glue right on that fold on the back side. Okay, and then again, I'm going to try to space this out so that I can get 3 of them on there without them fighting for space. And again, the very tip of that is going to be right up about where the stamen, the little frilly parts of the stamen start. Try to make sure that you've got it nice and straight up and down. And then once it's kind of making contact, you can go ahead and open up the little flaps there. Okay, then I've got one more to do here. And my glue bottle's sounds just as congested as I sound. I'm not sick, but it's just been so dry. Okay, and we'll put this last one in place here, just kind of right in between the other two. Make sure you've got it nice and aligned up and down, and then you can go ahead and open that up a little bit so it's not so smushed. And then if you look at it from this angle here, you can kind of see how it's supposed to look. Okay, so there you go. And now the reason that I have this floral foam is because I want this to kind of sit and not be leaning against the table, and I want that to dry. And this is where we're going to stop while we build the planter so that we can ensure that this dries completely. So we're going to do that one more time. Okay, I've got 3 more of these. And again, I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to put glue right on the very edge of that fold. If you're using AC cardstock like I am, the texture side is going to be the side in here. So where we're putting the glue is on the smooth side. And again, I'm going to put my first one right up against where that seam is, just to kind of cover that up. Okay, almost looks like a little shovel or something. Okay, so that's going on just like that. Hopefully you can see that. The orange is kind of coming up very saturated on my monitor here. Okay, and then I'm going to stick it into the side of this floral tape here, or floral brick. Okay, and grab my glue and just put a little bit of glue right on that edge. And just make sure that I'm giving it just the right amount of space. Put that second one in place. Oops. Yeah, once it grabs it, it'll hold. It'll be permanent. This glue is really strong. Okay, just opening it up a little bit. There, you can see that. And now here's the little last section there, that gap that doesn't have anything. This is where we're going to put our last little piece. Yeah, this glue sounds like it could use a neti pot. Okay. All right, and pop that last one right in between the other 2 that are already in place. And while I'm getting that in place, I'm going to spread that out a little bit just to fill it up. And there it is. Okay, so let me see how that one looks. Yeah, it looks fine. There we go. Okay, so you can see what that looks like. We've got 2 of them. We're gonna let these set until we're done putting the planter together, and then we're gonna finish up the flowers just to make sure that those don't get messed up in any way. Okay, so put all the floral stuff off to the side. We'll deal with that after we get our planter done. And the planter is actually very simple to put together, so maybe 10 minutes or so, hopefully. Okay, so here's this is the planter. Pretty much it's all one piece. Even the little base section is all kind of one piece as well. As you can see, I've done some pre-prep here. Now this is the top with the little square sections here, or the rectangular sections, where it kind of slants down like that. That is going to be your bottom. This is the very bottom. Okay, so the reason I'm telling you that is because these pieces, these decorative pieces here that I have, these have a series of score marks here and here. Okay, and those score marks are there to help you more accurately align the little band and the bow, the paper bow that go right along the center of the actual planter. Okay, so again, there's little markers here on these. You can't see them. I don't want to draw them in right now, but they're about right here. So they're not in the center. And what you want to make sure you do is find that little score mark and make sure that it's up at the top, closer to the top than the bottom. Okay, all of them need to be closer to the top, and then we're gonna glue them to the main structure here. And again, this is the top, so you want to make sure that you put the panel up with the same orientation, and you want to make sure you do that with all of them, and that's going to help you determine where to place that band as well as that bow once we get to that point. Okay, so there's some markers here as well to help you ensure that you get these aligned consistently. Okay, so you've got large ones to put here in the large section, and then there's some small ones that go down here, these little trapezoid shapes. And I've got a really busy paper here, and it's almost impossible to see the score marks unless you know exactly where they are. I'm just kind of feeling it with my thumb. I can actually feel it with my thumb, believe it or not. Okay, so let's get this one in place. And again, you're going to do this a total of 6 times. I'm only showing you 2 because that could get kind of boring if I did it 6 times. Again, use those little guides. Oh, and I did hit this with some ink. I just hit it with some ink, purple ink around the perimeter. Okay, and then we've got these little trapezoid shapes. These are going to go just below the section that we glued the larger pieces to. As you can see, they're already in place in 4 sections. And when you apply these, there are no guides, but you just want to make sure that you keep a nice even border all the way around it, and try to line it up consistently with its neighbor as well. Okay, we get our glue on this one and get that into place. So again, with these as well as the larger ones, you're going to repeat that a total of 4 more times for a total of 6. Okay, we got 6 sides to this little planter. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then we can begin putting this bad boy together, or bad girl. Okay. All right, so essentially these 2 sections are the same, obviously, as you can tell. What we're going to do is we're going to first connect them together using this tab here. Okay, so go ahead and get your glue on this tab, and I'm going to work that glue out to the very, very, very edge of that tab. And I'm going to use my table. I like to work flat whenever possible, and just get that nice and aligned with the other piece that is identical. You want to butt it up to that score mark there as close as you can without going over. And just kind of press that down. You can fold it over on top of itself and just kind of feel this seam here. Make sure everything feels good, as it does. Okay, now we're going to close it up by putting glue here. So let's do that. I'll go ahead and put some glue on. Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that I was doing this right. I don't see a problem with that. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay. Now you should be able to do this flat. Just connect that to the other side. Now it's all one seamless piece, completely connected. I'm going to fold it over onto itself at that seam. Give it a little extra push there. Okay. So planter is taking shape, and now all we have to do is just connect these tabs together. Okay, like that. So we're going to do that. And then we've got, well, let's just do one at a time here. So we're going to start with this tab here. You can see this little tab right here. Okay, so you can see this little tab here. We're going to put some glue on it. We're going to tuck it underneath and behind this tab, this section here, and we're just going to glue these together like so. We're going to do that all the way around, and then we'll do the smaller little tabs there. Boy, is it dry, I tell you. As much as I hate to say it, I sometimes wish that we had a little more humidity. I won't be saying that in the summer, but all right, so I'm working that glue out to the very edges, kind of also tacking it up by dabbing it a bit, and that will help it dry a lot faster. So get that lined up as accurately as you can. Okay, there we go. And just squeeze that together. There we go, perfect. And that should be pretty much dry by now. So we can move this out of the way and get glue on the next section here. So I'm just putting glue on that same tab, just one over. And we're going to join these together. Again, try to get it lined up as accurately as you can. There we go. Now you probably noticed that I put the panels on first, and I don't know if I mentioned it. I'm sure I mentioned it in other videos, but I like to work flat whenever possible because when this thing's built, it's a little harder to put as much pressure on things as far as panels go. Okay, so get your glue on the next tab here. You can see that tab right there. And just kind of dabbing that glue out to the edge. And bring this piece down, get them aligned, and just squeeze them together. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, we can move that out of the way and get our glue on the next tab. Now this thing's starting to take shape here, so maybe you have to hold it up a little bit higher. It's not bending as much. Should still be able to see that okay. Get that glue out to the edge. Bring the next section down, line it up, and align, squeeze. Well, mine, actually, there we go. That's better. And just give that a press. There we go. And we've got 2 more tabs here. Pretty simple. Get our glue on this guy here. There we go. Bring that down. Get it aligned. And press. Maybe out of focus a little bit here. Let me fix that. Okay, so that just leaves one last tab here. Now it's sticking out currently, which is good because I got to put glue on it. But we're going to have to tuck it back in once we get our glue on here. And I'm just going to dab that glue a bit and just pop it in there. Pop it behind this section, just like we did the last 5 times. Line it up, give it a squeeze, and voila. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to put this down flat, and let's pull these tabs out, or these sections out, I should say, because this thing's going to kind of change direction now. It's kind of, you know, it's coming straight, coming in. Now it's going to be straight again. And what we're going to do, we got these little tiny triangular tabs here. We're going to glue these to our little neighbor friends here. So it doesn't matter where we start, just pick one. And just one little dot of glue will do. I would probably flatten it out a bit, just dab it, tuck it behind its neighbor. Make sure you get it nice and lined up and nice and straight. And just give it a squeeze. Hold that for just a moment. It's a very small area, not a lot of glue, should not take that long. If you're spending more than a minute on it, you're using too much glue, is my guess. Or the humidity is just really bad. Okay, so you can see this next tab here, just a dot. There we go. And we'll tuck it behind and get it lined up, give that a press. And there we go. All right, and moving on. As long as I'm not jostling it around too much, that last tab that I connected, it may not be completely set, but it'll get there. I've pressed on it hard enough to where I know it's in place. Maybe in another 15-20 seconds it'll be even more set, but I don't think I need to worry about it too much, so I can move on and kind of keep the flow going here. Okay, so that one's in place. Going on to the next tab here, you can see it right there. I think my glue bottle needs some Mucinex. Okay, All right, just tucking that right behind its neighbor, making sure it's nice and lined up, giving it a squeeze, and voila. And that just leaves a couple more tabs here. Next one, same thing. You can see it right there. Get my glue, pop it right on there, tack it up a little bit with my finger. Don't want to lose my glue bottle. Tuck it behind, line it up, and give it a press. Perfect. There we go. And that just leaves one more. Now with this one here, since this tab's already connected, I don't really want to pull this out too much because I don't want to risk tearing it off of the other side that we've already glued down. So I'm just going to put glue on this tab from the inside. Just one little dot. And get that lined up. And press and hold that together. Like that. There we go. Now these tabs here, these tabs are going to help us create the very base of our planter. And we can do that now. Or what we can do is kind of shift gears here. These are just some extra little tabs that are going to get glued down onto themselves just to kind of help reinforce the very top. So what you want to do is you want to put your glue on this section, but get some glue out to the edge as well. And I need a little bit more up there. I'm going to spread it out to the very, very, very edge. And then you can go ahead and fold it in onto itself and just press and hold. You can use your table to do this. Just press and hold down on that tab. You can see the tab here. And I'm just pushing and holding it down. Just making sure that that very edge is making contact in there so it doesn't come loose. Okay, and we can literally do this on our table like this. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just putting glue on this section here. And then a nice thin line out to the edge that I'm going to spread out with my finger, like so. And then literally just taking it and folding it over onto the inside and just pressing and holding that down for a moment. It's going to make the little lip here a lot sturdier, less likely to warp, less likely to get dented, and so on. Okay, so we're going to go around, do this 4 more times with the 4 remaining sections. A little bit of glue on the inside, get some out to the very edge, spread it out to the very, very edge, tuck it in, press it down onto itself on the inside. Okay. All right, moving right along. So again, this is getting kind of redundant here. If you want to move on or pause me and finish it up and then come back to the next section, you're welcome to do that. Okay. I was talking to my mom the other day. She's already out getting stuff for her little hydroponic garden to start her tomatoes. I'm thinking about my garden too. Just want to get outside and maybe gonna put a little tiny greenhouse inside because the empty areas that I have are mostly in the basement. It doesn't get too warm down there. For like tomatoes and stuff, you really need to give them a lot of, not just light, but heat if you want them to grow with any sort of velocity. Otherwise, they just, when you go to transplant them, if they are malnourished because they're, not strong enough, they're just going to crack. Okay, so we should be starting those probably sometime probably March, not February. Okay. All right, so there you have the very top all done. Now we're just going to close up the bottom. Okay, and so with the bottom, we made the bottom, this whole section, yellow. Okay, so we're actually going to close it up with this yellow piece. Okay, this other piece here has a little L on it. That is our liner. That's going to go inside to make that a little bit stronger, reinforce it on the inside. So what we're going to do to get this in place is we're going to start by anchoring it to one of the tabs first. So pick a tab, any tab, doesn't matter which one. Get some glue on it, spread it out to the very edge. Okay, and then grab this piece, the piece that does not have the little L on it, and line that up. Get it nice and centered and nice and up to the edge of that tab. Make sure it's making good contact, and then press that into place. Okay, let's get it nice and anchored. Be patient while that sets. Unfortunately, I can't use my table here, I don't think. I guess I can. Look at that. I have to do it at an angle. Anytime I can push down onto a hard surface, it really expedites the setting process. Okay, so we've got it connected at one of the tabs. Now we can move this out of the way. And now we're going to close it up. I'm going to put glue on the remaining 5 tabs. Okay, so I'm going to put a nice amount here in the center, and then I'll do a nice little line out to the perimeter so that when we close this up, it'll look nice and seamless and clean. Okay, and I'm going to spread that glue out to the very edge. And it's drying quick. There we go. Can flip these up a little bit so that as we're putting this down, it grabs more of that surface area, and focus on getting it lined up with the side opposite of the side that's already hinged on. Get that nice and centered and aligned, and it kind of almost just kind of naturally gets the rest of it in place as well. You want to quickly and gently run your finger along the perimeter here. Make sure that everything is making good contact. Okay, give that a moment to set. And then we'll flip it over and we'll push down on those tabs from the inside and hope that everything is nice and seamless. Just like that. Push down from the inside onto those tabs. There we go. And let's check our work. That looks great. Okay, so now we can take our glue and put some glue on the actual tabs here on the inside and a little bit in the center. Take this piece with the L on it and just drop it right in there. It should fit nice and snug. And there's our little liner to finish that off. You're not really going to see much of this anyway because we're going to put some floral foam in here as well as some moss. But there's our planter almost done. Now again, the bottom section of this is yellow, and we've got this piece. It's going to go around the bottom. Okay, so you can see that there are some score marks on this. So you do want to fold this at the score marks. And when you're folding it, don't just fold it, but make sure that the sides of this match up with the sides of this, because that one little score mark sometimes makes it fold like this, but you want it right on top of itself so that it's a nice even fold. Okay, so when we go to place this, we're going to start by putting glue on the center. So get your glue on the center of the 3 sections, okay, and find a side, it doesn't matter which side, and pop it right on there. Use those little score marks that are there to align that with the edges there, and just press and hold that in place until it sets. And the bottom should be flush with the very bottom of our box as well. Just hold that in place until it's fully set, and then the other sides will go on in a breeze. Okay, give that a second to set. And kind of while you're holding that centerpiece, you can fold these out and get some glue on this section. Make sure you work that glue out to the very, very edge of that section there, and then bring it over and lay it right onto that section there, and just press and hold that for a moment. Let it set. Okay, and now while that's setting, you can fold out this section. Get a little bit of glue on there. Make sure you get some out to the edge, and just fold that over onto this side. And that should match up nicely. And just hold that in place as well. Okay, I think the other 2 sides are pretty much good. And you can see how seamless that yellow section looks. It looks like it's all, you know, all one piece. Okay. So there we go. So half of it's done. And of course, we've got one more section here that's just white, but we have another piece like this. So again, just make sure you fold it at the score marks. Start with the center. Get your glue on the center of this, like that. And then pop it right onto the center of these three that are left. You don't want to put it here because you don't want to overlap that. So find the center of the three sections that are still left and place the center of this little strip onto the remaining center here. Press and hold that in place. And again, while I'm holding this down, I can flip out one of these sides and add some glue and make sure we get it out to the edge. Fold it over onto that section and press that down right at the very end. Should pretty much line up and meet up with the other side. Should be pretty spot on, as long as it's not crooked. Okay, so I'm going to hold that with my fingers while I go over to this one and wrap this up. Okay, all the way out to the edge there. That's fine, I did pretty good there. And just wrap that around. And it should meet up there as well. And there we go. Very nice. Okay, so planter is almost done. We're going to put our little band around it and make our little bow. And then we'll go back to our flowers and wrap this thing up. It's really not that difficult of a project. I think the most time, if you decide that you're going to ink, I think that's where you're going to spend most of your time on this project, but to me that's actually my favorite part, so I don't mind that. I told Ron today I could do this all day as far as making the flowers go. Okay, so our planter is done. Okay, it looks great. Let's go ahead and take a look at our little band here. And just like that little strip on the bottom, this band also has some score marks, so go ahead and fold this at the score marks and make sure that you're folding it on top of itself so the edges line up nice and even. Okay, and we'll do that to both of these just to get them ready. Find that score mark. And I went ahead and, this is a graphic 45 paper as well. I went ahead and inked the edges of this just to kind of jazz it up a bit. All right, now, remember those little markers that we had there? Well, we're going to use those. The top of this is going to match up. The little marker is right here. I'll show you, it's right here. So we're going to nudge this up against that little marker there, and that just centers it. Okay, it just ensures that everything is nice and centered. Okay, and that's going to go on just like that. It's a very pretty little addition. Okay, and just like we did with the bottom, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start in the center and get our glue on the entire centerpiece here. Okay, make sure that we're lining it up with the little indicator there, the little score marks. I can see them now. Now that I know exactly where they are, I can see them really well. Okay, and that looks nice and even. The little folds here are ending up right on that corner perfectly. So I know I've got that right. So I'm going to really squeeze this in place and make sure that it's sitting and making good contact. And then I can go ahead and bring this over and get my glue on this next section here. Make sure you get that glue out to the very edge, just like I did, and fold it over. But before you commit, make sure that you have it lined up with that little score mark indicator there, just below where that little score mark is. And you can see that this ends up right at the very corner here. All right, so that one's good. And again, pay extra attention here to making sure that you're really pressing here at the very edge so that it doesn't come peeling off. I'm not even as concerned or moderately concerned about the center as long as it's making some contact. But here you want to make sure that it's really making good contact and that it's you know, sitting nice and steady and nice and tight. Okay, so we've got one more section here on our first strip. We'll get that in place. We'll do the same thing with the other one, and we'll make our little bow. And I think I'm going to make the bow, but I don't know if I'm going to glue it on right away. I might do that at the end after I get everything else done. Okay, so we're just going to fold this over on this end here. Make sure you're putting it right underneath where that little score mark is. You're basically hiding the score mark. You're like right on top of it. Okay, and then give that a press right towards the edge. Beautiful. There we go. Okay, so you can see how that looks, and then eventually our little bow is going to go there. Okay, so one half of this is on, just like the bottom, and we're going to do the same thing with the other section, starting in the center. Let's get our glue on the center section. Okay, and using those little guides, I can see them now. Even though I've got a busy pattern here, I can see them. And there we go. Pardon my head there for a second. Now, before I commit to this, I'm going to go over here, and you can see that that matches up nicely, and you can see that that matches up nicely. Okay, so I know that I've got it nice and centered. And there we go. Now, while I'm holding that in place, I'll head on over here to one of these end points or end pieces. Get my glue all the way down to the very edge and grab it by the very tip here and just make sure that it's nice and aligned with the other side. It should match up, should basically be kind of rubbing, they should be rubbing noses here. That's how accurately this is engineered. Kudos to Diana for that. That is pristine engineering, especially when we're dealing with paper. So that is awesome. Okay, so that's in place. That looks good. Last section here. And again, make sure you get that glue out to the edge. Beautiful. And fold that over, kind of grab that tip. Make sure that it lines up nicely with the other side before you really press it into place. And there we go. Look at that. Almost looks seamless. Pretty much is, actually. Well done, Dreaming Tree team. Very exciting. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much done. And again, we're going to put the bow together, and I may or may not glue it down. So here's our bow. And really, you know what, you could maybe train it a little bit just to make it a little bit round. Okay, you can see how that is. And then you'll notice that there's a little tab here. You don't really need to fold it or anything, but there's also a little rectangular section in the center. What we're going to do is we're going to put glue on this tab. Make sure I'm doing that right. Yep. Put glue on that tab. Put way too much on there. Tack it up a bit, and we're going to fold it over onto the little rectangular piece in the center, just like that. Okay. I'm just kind of wiggling this to make sure that I've got it good and centered. Okay, and that's what we're doing. We're just kind of creating a loop. And essentially, eventually, this is going to look like a bow. Okay, so there's the first side. Just kind of hold that. There's a lot of resistance there, so be patient. And while I've still got that held down with my fingers, I'm going to go over to the other side, throw some glue on that other little tab, and bring that right into the center on top of the other little tab that we just glued down to create our little bow. Okay, now we can take just take a little dowel and use that to press that down into place. Maybe a thinner one so I can get right up into the corner there. Okay, and that looks nice. And then finally, this little piece here, there's no score marks on this, but what you're going to do is just kind of put it over the center and just fold it back around the back. Okay, just like that. If you leave a little bit of slack there, it'll create a little bit of depth. And all we're doing is putting a little bit of glue on one side here, like that, and then just folding the other side onto it, making sure that it's nice and straight for the most part. Let me see what that looks like from the front. That looks fine. So I'm going to hold that just for a second. And I can kind of, well, let me be more patient here and let that really set before I go messing with it. See, mine's set, and then, well, it didn't completely set. I got to do that again. Just press and hold that. Be patient while it sets. And there's our pretty little bow. And that is going to get attached to whatever side you want. I guess whatever side you think looks best. You can either glue it, use a little foam square or a pop dot. I'm going to let this set a little bit more, and I'll probably use a little foam square to get that adhered. That looks good. We'll just throw a little foam square on there, and then we'll be set and ready to finish up our flowers and work on our arrangement. So we're pretty much on the home stretch here. Okay, so again, find a side. I'm happy with all my sides for the most part, but I think maybe this side looks the best. And make sure it's nice and centered. And there you go. Okay, so there's our beautiful planter ready for our plants, our crocuses, croci. Yeah, I kind of wanted to adjust it and move it a little bit to the right because I think it was a little off center. There we go. Okay. All right, let's finish up these flowers and finish up the project. Okay, so planter is done. Now, of course, you're going to need to take some floral foam, cut it to size, and just pop it in there. I would recommend using some hot glue to make sure that it sits in there nicely. All right, so I put my floral foam in there. I had some Spanish moss, and Ron had this cool idea to maybe make it look like, well, that these are kind of poking out of some grass that maybe still has a little bit of snow on it. So I got this at Hobby Lobby. I've probably bought like 4 of these because I use these for some of our winter photo shoots. And it's just like a can of snow. And I just kind of, I got my moss in there. I put my hand over here, just kind of shot it into the corners, and made sure that I didn't get it onto the paper. And it kind of looks really cool. We'll see how that turns out. We're going to let that dry while we work on our flowers now, which is really just the last thing to do. So as you can see here, I've got 3 of them already made. And we're going to do the arrangement in a little bit, but we'll put those off to the side, and I'll show you how to put together 2 of these flowers. Okay, now remember, we've already started on the little stamens here, and those are all good to go. Now, what we're going to do is kind of create another little assembly line here. And I'm going to grab my petals first. Okay. Now, I want the texture side to be outside, and well, all you really need to do is grab a dowel, something a little bit thicker. This is like a 1/4 inch dowel, and start like right in the center and just kind of curl the center just so that it kind of goes like that. Let me put that up against my hand so you can see it better. Just like that. And then on the other side, curl it towards you a little bit. Okay, so we're kind of creating, including the little base there, like an S shape, like that, okay? Now, I may have curled that out a little bit too much, so I'm gonna curl this back in just a tad. Okay, we can always fix this later on, but essentially, just for starters, we kind of want something shaped like that, okay? Because this is gonna be up against the stick here, the main stem, and we want it to kind of cup the flower like so, okay? So that's kind of what we're after. And again, we can always do some additional shaping after we get everything in place. So what I would do is I would just begin by curling these petals, getting all these nice and ready. Okay, and I might actually use a thicker dowel. I'm noticing that it's kind of creasing it more than I would like it to. I don't remember which one I used. I did think I used this one, yeah. Okay, and then give it a little bit of a curl that way. There we go. Just like that. Okay, and then you can do this to all of your petals just to kind of get them going, get them ready to be placed into, well, onto the stem. Okay. So really what I'm doing is, I'm going to show you here again, I'm taking the dowel, putting it about halfway right in the middle of the petal. I've got one finger on the other end, and I'm kind of bending it towards me while pushing through with the dowel. And that's what that does. It just kind of trains it. Okay. So roughly like that. Doesn't have to be perfect right now. We can always do some more shaping later. Okay, and you can do the same thing to the other 4 sets of your flowers. Okay, so like I said, just kind of make a little assembly line and do that with all of your flowers. Get them ready to go. And then we'll go on to the next step here. So again, I'm only doing 2 flowers with you. And for the other 3 that you're going to be doing, just kind of rewind it. Or by then, after you do 2, I think you'll pretty much remember how to do it. At least I did. But if not, you can always go back and rewatch, just kind of rewind it back to where I start working on the flowers. And you know, some of these you can curl them more, you can curl them less. Some of them you want them to kind of be closed up more. Some of them can be opened up more. If you take a look at, you know, the flowers, the crocuses on like Google Images, you'll see there's a lot of variation, which is what we're after. Okay, so now that we've got the stamens in place, step 1 is, and we're gonna do this 1 petal at a time. We're gonna take where the very base of this petal is and pretty much line it up with where the very base of the stamen is. Okay, so pretty much right where the stamen ends. And that is kind of the look that we're going for, like that. Okay, and rather than trying to wrap each individual petal with the floral tape, I found that I tried to do that initially, and then Ron was like, well, I would glue them on first. So put a little bit of glue right at the very base of that petal. And again, it doesn't matter where you put this first one. Just pop it on there and make sure that the bottom of that petal is pretty much in line with the bottom of the stamen piece. Okay, and one thing to keep in mind and to kind of focus on is making sure that that top of this petal is pretty much on the same plane as the top of the little stamen pieces here. Now when we spread them out, they might be a little bit lower, but as far as the height, you want to keep them pretty much at the same height. Okay, so you can see that like that. Okay, so that one's good. That one's there. And this is where the floral foam comes in handy. You can just pop it right in there, leave it in there while you prep the next piece so that you don't risk, you know, making that piece fall off that you just glued on, because it's probably still kind of drying. Okay, so now what we want to do is when we put the second petal on, ultimately, we're going to put 3 on, and we want to space them out evenly, like a little tripod. Okay, so this one, we're going to put it next to it, but not too close next to it. You want to space it out a little bit so that when we put our third petal on here, I don't have glue on it, I'm just trying to illustrate this to you. When we put our third petal on here, we want to make sure that it's pretty evenly spaced, give or take a little bit. It doesn't have to be completely perfect, but give them a little bit of space, but make them, you know, stagger them evenly as you can. Okay, so 2 of them are on there. That's good. We can pop that back into our floral foam, grab our next little petal, get a little bit of glue on there, just a tiny bit, you don't need a lot. And again, now with this one, it's going to go right into the gap where the other 2 are kind of almost like creating a space that this thing will fit into exactly. And you can see how evenly spaced that is. So do your best to do that. Try to get them nice and evenly spaced. And you can see how important, although optional, the shading on the inside and the outside is. Okay, the shading on the inside is almost mesmerizing in some ways. Okay, so there we go. We've got 3 of them in. And now what I've been doing just because I think it's easier, is after I get my first 3 on, I tape these. I tape these down. So just go right about there, and with your tape, just tape those down and bring it down just a little bit, and just like that. Okay, so those are really not going to move now. So they're glued and taped, and half of our flower is done as far as the petals go. So we'll pop that right back into our floral foam, grab our 4th petal, put a little bit of glue just right on this section here. And now with the next layer, we're going to stagger these and put them in between the other ones. We still want to pretty much line them up with the base of the stamen piece, maybe a little bit lower, obviously, because there's not enough room for it to really get into that little nook. So it may be just a tiny bit lower, but for the most part, right there. And of course, you want to make sure that it's staggered pretty much right in between the other 2. Okay, you can bring it down just a tad and just hold that in place. Make sure it's nice and centered, and pop that back into our floral tape or foam, and grab our next petal, throw a little bit of glue on there, just a tiny bit, and pull this out. And again, I want to stagger these, so we're going to put this one in between these 2 from the first layer. Make sure it's nice and centered. Okay, and press that into place. Now the whole thing's probably not making contact, but it's making it just enough contact to where it's going to stay in place until we tape it. Okay, so that looks nice so far. Pop that back in there while we grab our last petal, apply our glue, grab it, and this is the last side here that we haven't put a petal on. And again, we're putting it in between these other 2, just kind of staggering it. Okay, now I'm going to probably just kind of adjust these a little bit just to make sure that everything's nice and staggered evenly. And I'm going to press and hold that with my fingers until it's fully set. Now this one's really opened up, but with a little dowel and a little finessing, we can close this up a little bit more here, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. I almost want to wait until this thing's fully assembled with the rest of the pieces before we start doing any sort of training and finessing, because it may kind of fall out of place anyway, because we're going to be adding some more elements to this. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And of course, we'll grab our tape, and we're going to tape this down so it really doesn't go anywhere. So that glue is kind of like a temporary hold, and the tape is more of a permanent hold. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to grab a thick dowel, and I'm going to just curl these in a little bit. And it may help to, if you want to bring it in more, get a smaller dowel and untrain that a little bit. Just train it in like that. Okay, there we go. See, now that's kind of coming more towards the center. And it all depends on how you want it. And again, variation is kind of key here. So with this one here, this one's going to be a little more closed up than, say, my other purple one. Let me bring this one in a little bit. This is the one that's really bringing this out. There we go. Okay, so you can see the difference between this one and that one. This one's a little more closed, this one's a little more open, and that's fine. Variation is nice, okay, but they both look great. So once we get the flowers on here, we're going to put on the little sheath piece. Okay, now for this one, I'm putting 2 on. One's going to go on right now. Another one's going to go down a little bit further. As you can see on this white one, I've got one here, and then I've got one up at the top. But on this one, I only have one up at the top. So it depends on how many you want and where you want to put them. It's up to you. You can do just one on all of them, but we've given you enough to where you can have 2 sheaths on 3 flowers. Okay, so we're going to take this sheath piece and we're going to wrap it around a dowel just to kind of start training it and make it round. Okay, and now I'm going to take a smaller dowel and wrap it around even more, just to kind of make it like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do, I'm going to pop this in here, and right about there, and just kind of wrap it around. And I would probably stagger this a little bit so it's not sitting like right on top of one of the petals, maybe like in between two petals, so it's not really pushing up against it at all. Okay, and you can do one of two things here. You could, if you want, put a little bit of glue right on the very tip of that and just press and hold that down. Ultimately, we are going to tape this up anyway, but this may just give us a little bit of a tighter, more finished look. Okay, so I'm going to leave that like that for a second, let it set, and then I'm going to tape it. And then all that's left to do for this one, let me get the tape on here. I'm going to tape it right about here. We're going to tape this down. Oops, it moved. It's okay though. That's why we're putting this floral tape on here so it doesn't move. There we go. Oops, well, that was bad. What are you doing, Leo? I'm gonna have to go buy some more floral tape. Okay, so now that our sheath is in place, okay, again, each flower is gonna have a total of 5 leaves, okay, and you can alternate the colors, mix and match them however you want. You can do 3 of one color and 2 of another, 4 of one color, 1 of another, however you want to do it, up to you. And when we put these on, it's up to you as far as, you know, how you want to shape these. Some of these you can train so that they're kind of like that. Okay, others you can just kind of maybe train just a little bit so that they're sticking up more. Some of them you could make them really pronounced and make them kind of dangle down. Or if you want, you can literally curl it like this, almost like you got your hair in a hair curler, and really make it curl. Okay, so it's up to you how you want to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down about a quarter inch or an inch, or I'm sorry, 1/8 to a quarter from the bottom of the sheath, and start our first one there. And then each next one's going to go down about an 1/8 or a quarter inch, whatever looks right. And we're just going to tape that into place. Okay, so we'll tape that one down just like that. And that looks nice. I'm going to grab one here that is kind of standing up. So there's the bottom of this one. We're going to go down about a quarter inch. I'm going to put this one here. I'm going to stagger it a little bit, of course, so it's not sitting right on top of the previous one. And just get that taped down. Just like that. Real quick, real simple. Maybe pull it away just a tad. Okay, so there's that one. And then, so the bottom of that one's about here. We're going to go down another about quarter or 1/8 of an inch. And this one here, I'm going to train this one out a little bit more. And that one's going to go here. Okay. And now I notice sometimes when I'm taping this, it kind of moves. So be careful that it doesn't move too much, because you may end up getting it sitting right on top of the previous layer, which you don't want. You want to stagger these as much as possible to make them look nice and full. Okay, so there's my third one. Now I'm going to grab this one here, and I'm actually going to train it the opposite way here, and then I'm going to train it this way here, so it kind of just does one of these things. Okay, and that's fine. Again, variation. You want to kind of fluff them out a little bit. And again, this one's going down about a quarter inch to about maybe 1/8 an inch or so below where the previous one ends. And I'm going to tape that one down. Let me stretch that out a little bit. Make sure it's nice and straight. There we go. Like that. There we go. Okay, and the last one. And this one I think I'm going to keep pretty straight. Let me just give it a slight curve. And that's going to go right about, the side needs a little love. We'll throw it right there. and just tape that down, just like we did the rest of them. Okay, and there's our flower. Bam. Okay, so now again, let me see if I remember if I did this right. Yeah, so again, on some of them, you're gonna have one sheath up at the top. On this one, I'm gonna do a second sheath, and this one's gonna go down at the bottom. Okay, so just like I did the first time, I'm gonna start by making this round using a large dowel, and then I'll use the smaller one just so that it doesn't crease as easily. Okay, so there's our nice sheath. I'm gonna pop that right on here. It kind of hides things a little bit too. Doesn't make it look as paperish, I guess. Okay, so you can see how that looks. Now maybe stagger that a little bit too, so that the tips of the sheaths are not on the same exact side. And again, just to make it nice and tight, you can throw a little bit of glue right on the very, very edge on the bottom of this little sheath piece, and just wrap it nice and tight, and just hold that in place while it sets. And then we'll do one more final go around with the floral tape just to finish it off. And we've got a flower, and we'll do one more here, and then we're pretty much ready to work on our little arrangement. Okay, so that was kind of sliding down, which is why we're putting this tape on here. Get it in place, and then just wrap it down. I'll go all the way to the bottom just to be safe, and there we have it. And then, of course, once all said and done, like this one, I kind of don't like that one sitting out, so I'm just going to change it up a little bit. Okay. Yeah, this looks like this petal could be moved a bit. And there we go. Okay, so you can see what these are all starting to look like when you put them all together. Very pretty. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and do this one more time with one more flower. And then show you one other thing that you can do to kind of fill this in a little bit more. Here is our little stamen piece. And just like we did the first time, starting with a set of 3 petals, one at a time here. All right, so like I said, we're gonna start with just one of the petals, get a little bit of glue on there, not too much, don't go too thick. And the base of this, the very bottom of this, you wanna line that up with the very bottom of the stamen piece, get it nice and centered, nice and vertical in reference to the verticalness of the actual stamen. So you just want it to be nice and lined up like that. Okay, there we go. First one's in place. We'll just pop it right into our floral foam just to hold it there. Grab our next petal, get a little bit of glue on there, and line that up. Just like that. Again, we're trying to get 3 spaced out as evenly as we can. So there's going to be just a tiny little gap in between the 2. You don't want them overlapping at all. And we'll grab the next one. Very little glue, don't need a lot. And then you can see how there's a nice little gap ready for you there. I'm just going to pop this petal right in between those 2. Take a look from the top, like a little eagle eye view, and they should look nice and spaced out, like so. There we go. Give that a second to set or cure, whatever you want to call it. And if you want, while you're holding this like this is the opportune time to really, change the shape of it if you want. Like this one, I think on this one I got it pretty random. I'm gonna bring these in a little bit more, and then just maybe curl the tops and have one of them just kind of sticking out like that. That's fine. Grab a thicker dowel, maybe curl this one in. So just go for variety. You don't want them all looking the same because, when these things are out in nature, they're dealing with wind, they're dealing with birds and all kinds of stuff that's messing with them, and they're never just all looking like the same, I guess. There's everyone's different, Okay, so we're going to tape the first 3 down, just like we did the first time. Now when you do that, make sure that you're not moving them out of place. So kind of use your thumb to push down and make sure that they're holding steady and keeping their place. That looks good. It looks pretty staggered. So pop that in there. Grab our next set of 3, going one at a time here. Put a little bit of glue right on that straight part, and again, just putting it right in between the other 2 that are already there, making sure that it's staggered evenly, basically right in the center of the 2. So pick any 2 and then grab this one and just pop it right in there. Make sure it's nice and centered between the 2. Press and hold that down for a sec, and then grab your next one. And there we go. Next one here. All right, these 2. Popping it right in the center of those 2. And just press and hold. Make sure your spacing is nice and staggered. You can see how that looks. There we go. And there we go. Last one. And here's that little gap where the last one's going to go. Whoops. Whoops. And the idea here is just to, again, get it to, semi-hold, because we are going to tape it. And that looks great. That inking really, really sets it off. I don't think I would love these quite as much without the ink. Just really makes them pop. This one almost looks like it's just, like, I don't know, being lit up by the sun kind of a little bit. All right, so I'm just going to be patient while that sets. And I can already tell that I'm going to need to maybe curl some of the tips of these outer ones in a little bit. They're sticking out a little bit too much for my liking right now. And it was kind of a good time to maybe do that. So I'm just going to take the tip and just curl it in like that. There we go. Like that. And then this one here, can always go down to the bottom. Just give that a little bit of a curl in. And there we go, kind of like that. I think that looks nice, so let's go ahead and make it permanent with our tape. Make sure that things aren't moving and shifting around on you. And there we go. Yeah, looks good. Very nice. And then don't forget to take your little stamens and kind of flare them out a little bit. Create some space between all of the little individual guys there. And there we go. Okay, so pop that in there. Grab our sheath and roll it around a big dowel or a marker, and then grab a smaller dowel and roll it around this dowel. Get it nice and tight and small like that. Okay. And then take it, slide it in there, and I'm going to glue it to itself first, and then we'll kind of slide it up and put it in place. So just throw a little bit of glue right on the very edge down here, just right there, and grab that other end, wrap it around, get it as tight as you possibly can without going too crazy. Kind of like that, because we do have to slide it up, so there's got to be a little bit of room, a little bit of wiggle room there to get it around that thicker part of the stem because of all that tape we added. And just hold that in place for a moment, let it set. Do as I say, not as I do. I let it go, thinking that it was set, but of course there's some resistance here, so it's not all that, not going to dry as quickly. Okay. So keep that in place until it's fully set. Then you can take your floral tape and just tape that down like so. And that'll keep it from shifting up and down. Okay, so that's done. Now we just need to put our little leaves on here and we're done with our flowers. So again, up to you how much you want to shape these. If you want to curl them a lot, curl them a little, whatever you want to do. I'd start the first one so that it's, you know, kind of right up against it, and then we'll work our way down. So essentially, the bottom of the sheath, go about 1/4 inch as far as the bottom of this is concerned. Bring the bottom of the first leaf about 1/4 inch below where the bottom of the sheath is. And that's a good starting point for your first one. Okay, so as I was saying, the bottom of the first leaf, we're going to put that about 1/4 inch below the bottom of the sheath. Okay, so just figure out where you want it. And you can glue it if you want, but I'm just taping them because that works nicely. Okay, we'll bring that down. That's good. All right, and let me pull that away a little bit. There we go. I'll grab the next one, and this one's going to get a bigger curl. And he's going to go, like I said, about 1/4 inch below the base of the first one that we already have in place. And we'll just tape that down. Make sure that it's nice and straight up and down. It's not all sideways. There we go. And let's pull that away from the flower just a bit. Like that. This one is going to be a little straighter. And again, I'm staggering these so they're not right on top of each other. So I'm going about 1/4 inch down here. And I'll just tape that into place. Make sure you stretch this out so that you get some of that sticky stuff on that tape. Okay. And we'll pull that one out a little bit. Okay. And this one, I'm going to curl a ton, stagger it about 1/4 inch down. And I got it going the wrong way. Whoops. There we go. And we'll tape that down. And that just leaves one more. And we're ready to get these into our project, or into our planter, I should say. Okay, so there we go. And this one's going to be, just going to kind of curl that one like that, make it stand up straight, about 1/4 inch down. And I did it wrong again. I want the texture side facing me. That's why I didn't really do it wrong. I just had the wrong side facing me, that's all. Okay, and get that nice and staggered. Like I said, the base of this about 1/4 inch below the previous one, and then we'll tape that into place. And there we go. We'll bring that down all the way just to finish it off. And there we go. Okay. And then, of course, this is the time where you can kind of finesse your leaves however you want. But there is our pretty flower. And again, with some of these, you'll have one sheath. On this one here, we did 2. This one here only has 1. Okay. So that's it for the flowers. Now, you're going to notice that you have a few extra little leaves here. And that is going to be some additional filler for the project. As you can see, I've taken just 3 on this one, 2 on this one. You can make single ones if you want. I think 3 or 4 would be the max that I would go on a single stem. Okay, I've got 4 left here. Just grab a couple more little skewers. These are about 5.5 inches. I don't even think they need to be that big. But what you want to do is just wrap these with some floral tape. And then we're just going to attach the remaining leaves to these and use them as fillers just to kind of fill out the planter nicely so that there's not, any gaps, and it looks nice and full, basically, is what we're going for. Okay, so let me get these all dressed in floral tape. And I'll show you how I do this. It's no different than what we just did with the flowers. Okay, so you can go ahead and shape these however you want. I'm just going to give this one a nice simple curve, nothing crazy, and just tape it right to the stick. Okay, just bring it down maybe an inch, half an inch, like that, and then I'll take another one, and I'm going to give this one a little more curve, like that. Put it right back to back on this one, and just tape that one down. Are those geese coming back because it's getting warm? Doubt it. I don't know if you guys heard those geese in the background. Okay, so there we go. So we've got 2 additional little leaves on a stem. Can pull that out a little bit, and you can see we'll shove that in there and just kind of make a nice little filler. And same thing goes with this one here. Okay, just kind of put it right up at the top. You can fold it a little bit and just kind of get it to hug the stem if you want. That's fine. I think when I tape it, it kind of naturally does that anyway, so I don't know if it's necessary, but you know, whatever technique works for you, works for me. Okay, so there's one, and we'll give this one slightly more of a curve like that. Let me rip this up a little bit. It's kind of, and put that one back to back, or slightly off to the side. Doesn't have to be exactly back to back. And then just tape that down to the stick and work it down maybe an inch or 2 just to make sure it doesn't come sliding up or down. And there we go. So we've got a few extra little fillers. We're probably end up cutting these. I don't know if we're going to need them sticking up so high. Okay, so that's it, really. All that's left to do now is pretty much just, you know, set up your arrangement now. And what I would do is, well, since we have one white one, I would maybe make that one kind of like the focal point. Okay, so let's just start, and I'm not going to push these in too far yet. I just want to get an idea of where things are going to go. So this one's going to be kind of centered, but a little bit to the back and up a little bit higher. Okay, and then you can take, let's see, maybe we need to bring this one back a little bit. And we'll take our, I can already tell these stems are going to be way too long, because this one, we want this one to go down lower than the white one. Oh, that's not too bad. Okay, so that looks about right. And then put a little purple one here. And again, trying to make sure that there's kind of a natural flow. Okay, so you can see how, and those are probably going to need to go down more. So I'm going to probably trim these stems a little bit, get them closer to the ground. And this guy's going to go up in the front here. And this one, of course, I'm going to bring down a bit so that we don't block the purple one. And then we'll put one more purple one here. And 5 seems to be a good number. So that's going to go down even more. That's way too high. I'm going to trim these. They're going to get a little bit closer to the ground. Well, the surface of the moss here. And then, of course, you know, these I can just kind of cut and just break off with my finger. And we'll add a few more of those, just kind of sticking out. And just kind of pop them in various places just to fill this up nicely. Yeah, and you don't, I guess, you know, when they grow and they get taller, they would stick out more out of a planter like this. But I'm going to go for a look where maybe they're just starting to pop out because the ground is just starting to get warm enough for them to really do their thing. Okay, so stick that one in back there. And for the most part, that is what it's going to look like, except we're not going to keep them as high. We're going to trim these down a little bit and make them a little bit closer to the ground. So I'm going to trim that one off and put them back in the spot I had them in, but just lower. There we go. Okay, same with this guy here. Come on, come out. There we go. I'll trim that stick off a little bit. Leave a little bit in case you want to bring it back up, because once you cut too much of that stick off, there's no turning back. Okay, so that one's going to go in more. Whoops. There we go. I'm going to bring that one up a little bit. Okay, so anyway, the idea here is to, work on your arrangement, kind of try to get it as full looking as possible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in there, take a look, and see if I'm happy with it. And if I am, I'm going to walk away, come back, give it 30 minutes, an hour, tomorrow, whatever, and take a look at it with a fresh set of eyes and see what you think. And, maybe you'll be like, oh, well, I do want them a little bit lower, or I should move this one over that way a little bit, and just mess around. Worst case scenario, take a look at the final photo on our website and just kind of try to mimic it based on the photo as far as the placement. I'll do my best to, you have a trailer that you can look at to see how things are organized, and I'll do my best to take a few photos from various angles to see, to show you kind of how things ended up for me. So anyway, beautiful project. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please take a moment and hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. You can see the little counter behind me. Walked in to another 100 subscribers. Very exciting today. So thank you to everyone that's already subscribed. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle, we'd love to see it. So join us in the official group on Facebook. Head on over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group up in your search bar, or you can use this little link, the little URL there that's popping up just below me. And you can join myself and the almost 18,000 dreamers that inspire us daily. So anyway, here's to spring. Here's to looking forward to spring. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I look forward to crafting with you again.